They watched us like we were insects in a glass jar. Long before the first Earth satellite blinked past their outer sentry net, the Council of Species had documented humanity, not as equals, not as contenders. No, they called us a flickering anomaly. Primitive mammals destined to burn out under our own ambition. To them, our wars were crude, our emotions a sign of chaos, our culture a joke. And when Earth's first interstellar signal broke through their quadrant, they didn't welcome it. They laughed. The Galarians, the oldest of the Galactic Empire's races, publicly dismissed humans as emotionally unstable combustion apes. The Vrethkai refused to even translate our language, calling it unrefined vibration noise. The Herricks posted memes across the datasphere, clips of human music, dance, our awkwardly shaped faces, all served up as mockery. Yet we saw it all. Not at first, not until 2137, when a rogue probe intercepted their broadcasts. But when we did, humanity didn't beg. We didn't recoil. We archived the laughter. We studied their dismissive tones, their sneering philosophies, and we vowed, not in public forums, not with hashtags, but in classified think tanks and secret orbital labs, never again. It was 2163 when they made the mistake of invading. Not war, not directly. It was a controlled study in New Jakarta. They abducted 50 citizens, ran stress resilience evaluations, and then dumped them back like lab rats. They wiped memories, but they forgot one thing. Humans remember trauma, even when it's erased. It seeps in through dreams. It screams through instincts. And one of them remembered. His name was Lieutenant Marcus Cade. A grunt in the Mars Frontier Security Force, Marcus began sleepwalking, carving alien glyphs into his bunk wall. Doctors called it PTSD, but one xenolinguist recognized the script. It was Herrick's. Marcus wasn't a genius. He was angry. He felt wronged in a way no therapy could fix. And he wasn't alone. By 2016-65, over 300 other abductees started showing signs. Dreams of sterile white rooms, screams in frequencies outside human hearing, the sensation of being watched. Our species had been violated. So we did what humans always do when backed into a corner. We adapted. We formed Black Echo, an off-the-books task force made up of those survivors, guided by exobiologists and behavioral analysts. Their mission was simple: find the Watchers, study them, break them. What the galaxy forgot was this: humans don't just fight with weapons. We fight with memory, with vengeance, with that deep primitive instinct that turns humiliation into evolution. By 2018-82, we had learned to mimic Herrick's communication signals. We cracked the Galarian emotion suppression implants. We created synthetic Vrethkai pheromones that disrupted their nervous systems. Every laugh they threw at us, we weaponized it. But our greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was rage. They had centuries of diplomacy, archives of strategy, fleets of sterile logic. We had Marcus Cade, broken, furious, and brilliant in his unpredictability. He became the symbol of what they feared most, a species that thrives in pain, that grows stronger when hated. And soon, whispers spread among the stars. The humans, they are changing. They weren't wrong. We were done being their punchline. The first time we struck back, it wasn't with a fleet or a declaration of war. It was with a corpse. A Herrick's diplomat, Ambassador Vlexthor, was found floating outside the orbit of Cygnus Prime. No damage to his body, no sign of struggle. Just one thing: a human-made breathing mask forced into his mouth, duct-taped tight. A crude, messy gesture. But strapped to his chest was a data stick encoded with a single message in multiple languages. Still laughing? The Council of Species convened in panic. Not because Vlexthor was dead. Death was common in diplomacy when egos clashed. but because humans weren't supposed to be capable of this. We weren't supposed to know how to breach their hyperlanes. We weren't supposed to know his location. We weren't supposed to care, but we did. Every human on Earth remembered the mockery. Black Echo made sure of that. They hijacked the feeds of every major global network, dropping truth bombs wrapped in classified leaks. They're out there. They took us. They tortured us. They're watching. Governments tried to silence it. Too late. Humanity had evolved past the age of being governed. The response wasn't chaos. It was focus. Across the globe, ideologies collapsed. Borders blurred. Rival superpowers began funneling black budgets into off-world R&D. And for once, the species didn't fight itself. We remembered a deeper truth. There is no race, no religion, no nation when you're all the same joke to someone else. They unified us. Their mistake. Black Echo grew in the shadows, but its effect lit the stars. They trained in silence, far from Earth's politics. Survivors of alien experimentation became tacticians. Engineers reverse-engineered psychic inhibitors. Soldiers learned to weaponize emotion. Literally. Using frequency amplifiers and neural feedback, they developed rage fields that could destabilize Herrick's control zones. But not all humans agreed. The United Terran Assembly, Earth's last pretense of political control, condemned Black Echo, called them terrorists, rogue actors, a threat to interspecies diplomacy. So Black Echo turned inward, disappeared. Marcus Cade knew they couldn't beat the galaxy by marching out in tanks. That's not how the game was played. The species that mocked us operated in shadows, so we became shadows darker than theirs. They called it the Phantom Epoch. From 2183 to 2189, dozens of unexplained incidents rippled across alien space. A Galarian cryo-archive collapsed. All history of Earth's classification as low priority deleted. Vrethkai breeding colonies began showing genetic anomalies, mutations resembling human neural patterns. A Herox warship disintegrated mid-warp, its last log reporting a frequency that screamed. No one claimed responsibility, but they all suspected, and slowly, the laughter stopped. Fear took its place. Still, the Council underestimated us. They believed it was guerrilla mischief, that they could negotiate, manipulate, outlast the emotional chaos. But Marcus wasn't fighting for survival. He was fighting for dominance, not just over one species, not over the Council, over the idea that humanity would always be less. The final trigger came in 2191. A hidden observatory on the moon of Drelak caught a transmission, an intercepted conversation between two Herox commanders. If they continue to mutate this way, humanity may not remain compatible with containment protocols. They're evolving unpredictably, dangerously. That was it. Confirmation. We had become more than a species. We were now a threat classification. The declaration came without fanfare, without a single official stamp. It was scrawled in black paint on the hull of an abandoned mining freighter drifting outside the Alcaran buffer zone. Alien trade routes that humans weren't supposed to even know existed. The words were in broken Herox dialect, but the meaning was unmistakable. Humanity is not prey. By then, the myth of Marcus Cade had become legend. The Council labeled him an extremist. The Herox called him the Woundwalker. Among humans, though, he had a different title. The Reminder. A living embodiment of the pain our species had swallowed and the fury it now unleashed. Black Echo's operations had turned surgical. One by one, they dismantled the alien systems that once monitored Earth. Satellites went silent. Spy drones vanished. Relay beacons reported gibberish or worse, human laughter fed back at ultrasonic pitch, destabilizing the Vrethkai's cerebral nets. But it wasn't about chaos anymore. It was about exposure. Because the Council's greatest weapon was never fleets or firepower. It was the illusion that humans were irrelevant, laughable. That belief, that condescension, had kept them safe. So Black Echo decided to make humans impossible to ignore. It began with the Koltar Accord Summit on the desert moon of Vetus Prime. Every species sent representatives, except Earth. We weren't invited. Of course we weren't. But we came anyway. Footage from the summit leaked 2 hours after it concluded. A grainy video, shaky and silent. The camera pans across the delegates. The usual preening, the pomp, and then a human, uninvited. Standing at the edge of the assembly hall, arms folded, emotionless. No security alert, no alarm, nothing. Just one man, watching. Then the video cuts to black. The council tried to deny it. Fabrication, they said. A digital hoax. But that night, every broadcast channel across the inner systems was hijacked, displaying the human's face. Beneath it, the message, "We see you now." The council panicked. For the first time in centuries, they felt fear not of a rival power, but of a species that wasn't supposed to matter. New policies were rushed into action, emergency meetings held. There were debates about quarantining the Sol system, about sterilization protocols, about erasing the threat before it metastasized. But it was already too late, because the real threat wasn't Marcus. It wasn't Black Echo. It was what they represented. Humans had become a culture of weaponized memory, a generation raised not on hope, but on injustice. Children of a planet that remembered every joke, every abduction, every insult. We weren't petitioning for a seat at their table. We were flipping the table over. The Herrics launched preemptive raids on human outposts, only to find them empty, booby-trapped with emotion-reactive minds. The Vrethkai tried psychic containment fields, but their minds were overwhelmed by feedback loops of human grief, trauma, rage. Raw emotion weaponized like never before. And on Earth, something even more dangerous was happening. We began to change. Cognitive enhancements once considered fringe science were now standard practice. Soldiers trained not in tactics, but in perception warfare. Neuroplastic augmentation let operatives empathize and manipulate other species' mental rhythms. Humans no longer fought with strength or numbers. We fought with psychology, with trauma, with the very emotions the galaxy once mocked us for. And somewhere in the void, Marcus Cade watched it all unfold. He wasn't trying to destroy the galaxy. He was trying to wake it up. The galaxy began to fracture, not from war, not from bombs or invasions, but from something far worse, doubt. The unified confidence of the Council, their centuries-old certainty that they ruled a stable universe, began to erode. Humanity had infected them not with a virus or ideology, but with the question that rattled beneath every council member's mask of reason. What if we were wrong about them? Whispers began in the outer colonies. Low-tier diplomats traded files in secret, recordings of human speech patterns, footage of Black Echo operations, dossiers marked with phrases like unquantifiable defiance and resistance beyond logic. Words they'd never associated with an inferior species. The old assumptions no longer held, because while the Council tried to maintain order, humans had already evolved past containment. On a moon base orbiting Zir 9, a Herrics technician encountered a security anomaly. A life form, unregistered, had breached their quantum firewall. Biological impossibility. But when they isolated the breach, the technician froze. It wasn't a virus. It was a heartbeat, human, faint, encoded in a sound loop that triggered a neural echo across all Herrics' internal comms. Within 30 minutes, 15 personnel were incapacitated. Nausea, panic, hallucinations. The report labeled it a neurological cascade incident. Marcus called it proof of concept. Meanwhile, on Earth, the truth was leaking. Black Echo had always been secretive, but now they began releasing pieces of their archive. Not propaganda, just facts. Photos of abductees, logs from alien observation drones, translated council documents labeling humans as emotional degenerates. And the public response? No fear, no protests, only resolve. Every citizen became part of the mission. Universities redesigned curriculum around alien psychology. Children were taught about the laughing years, the time before humanity realized how deeply it had been mocked. Entire nations collapsed their borders and gave their resources to the off-world reclamation program. We had no interest in revenge anymore. We were building something bigger, dominance by comprehension. Back in alien space, cracks widened. A faction within the Vrethkai began questioning the Council's decisions. Their empaths, once proud servants of order, grew disturbed by the echoes they absorbed from humans. Not hatred, not chaos, something else. Purpose. For the first time in their history, Vrethkai empaths defected, seeking asylum on Earth. They brought knowledge, star maps, Council weaknesses. They warned us of what the Council now considered. Total containment, not just blockades, not just sabotage, but species-wide extinction. The Council labeled it the Clean Sweep Directive. Marcus Cade saw the files first. He didn't blink, didn't panic. He simply called for Phase Sigma, a plan that had only existed in fragments, rumors, simulation blueprints, a final act of escalation that no one believed would ever be necessary. Black Echo activated sleeper agents embedded across 6 Council worlds. Each carried a single device, disguised as cultural artifacts. Useless-looking, forgotten. Each one, when activated, broadcasted the sound of a human child laughing. That laugh, so pure, so deeply emotional, crippled every psychic sensitive within a 50-kilometer radius. It bypassed logic. It shattered mental conditioning. Because it wasn't just a sound, it was a message. You laughed first. Now listen to ours. And the war, the real war, hadn't even started. The Clean Sweep Directive failed, not because it was flawed, but because by the time they initiated it, we were already inside. The Herrics, masters of manipulation and neural control, deployed sleeper spores across Sol's outer planets. Their plan was surgical: trigger biological rot from within. Let Earth eat itself in despair. But Earth had changed. The spores didn't infect chaos. They met structure. Discipline forged in fury. Humanity's biodefense grid, codenamed Project Redline, had already anticipated the chemical markers. Not only did it neutralize the spores, it sent back a molecular echo. A perfect replica of the infection, amplified with synthetic anger hormones. The Herrick's labs collapsed under the emotional shock. Across the galaxy, the narrative was crumbling. The Council's carefully curated image of humanity, violent, unstable, primitive, was now contradicted by reality. Humanity was strategic, brutal in precision, and worst of all, relentless. The Vrethkai sent emissaries, pleas of negotiation, cloaked in arrogance. Let us realign expectations, they said. Marcus met them personally, not with diplomats, not with armies, but with survivors. 10 humans abducted decades ago, each carrying evidence of what the Council had done. One by one, the survivors spoke, not with rage, but with calm. They described the tests, the needles, the humiliation, the dehumanization. They showed scars, implants, foreign residues still lingering in their bloodstreams. And then, they each stepped forward and placed a data chip in the hands of the emissaries. Inside, their full psychological records, a timeline of how those experiences shaped them into warriors, analysts, agents, into the very architects of humanity's rise. Pain is our blueprint, Marcus told them. You drew it for us. The emissaries left without a word, and suddenly, defections surged. Across the Council's outer systems, alien citizens began questioning the narrative. Why were we never told the full truth about Earth? If they're so weak, why do they keep winning? What did the Council do to provoke this? Then came the day of silence. Council fleets across 8 sectors went offline simultaneously. No shots fired. No explosions. Just stillness. When boarding parties were dispatched, they found crews comatose. No physical damage. But each screen displayed the same message, burned into the command interface. We do not forget. And now, neither will you. The source: a signal traced back to a classified lunar base on Earth's dark side, unacknowledged in any official human record. It was the Echo Core, the beating heart of Black Echo's psychological warfare unit, a cathedral of emotion, science, and memory. Within it, artificial minds reconstructed entire Council species' psyches and devised precise emotional disruptions. Not death, awakening. Marcus called it ethical overload. Break them without killing them. Let them live with the truths they buried. Let guilt do the bleeding. But Earth was preparing for more than psychological strikes, because the Council wouldn't stay paralyzed forever. And when they came, Marcus wanted them to see what humanity had become. Not just warriors, ascendants. The old galaxy had laughed at our rage. Now they would tremble at our evolution. They came in silence. No grand announcements. No banners. Just a darkened arc of starships appearing over the edge of the Kuiper Belt. The Council's last gamble. They called it Operation Final Shroud. A fleet of dreadnoughts loaded with entropy missiles, memory erasers, planet killers designed to turn Earth into a quiet legend. But Black Echo was already waiting. Marcus had seen it coming, not through sensors or spies, through patterns. He'd studied their arrogance like a religion, knew they would never allow humans to exist as equals. The Council didn't fear war. They feared reputation collapse. So when the fleet arrived, Earth didn't scramble. It didn't panic. It opened. Every comm array lit up, broadcasting directly into the fleet's command bandwidth. Visuals, files, recordings. No threats. Only truth. What they saw broke the chain of command in less than 7 minutes. They saw children in underground bunkers painting alien species in bright colors, not with fear, but curiosity. They saw labs where former Council defectors worked alongside humans to design psychological healing protocols. They saw the survivors of the abductions not as victims, but as leaders, scientists, creators. They saw Earth thriving, not in hatred, but in purpose. And then they saw the final clip. A Harrix scientist, stripped of his insignia, speaking directly to the camera. We called them animals, and they built art from it. We called them unstable, and they mastered their rage. We called them broken, and they chose to stay broken, so they would never forget. His voice cracked as he finished. We don't deserve their forgiveness, and God's help us if they ever stop choosing mercy. 3 dreadnoughts powered down. 1 turned and fired on the others. Within an hour, half the fleet was in chaos, mutiny, surrender, disarray. Black Echo didn't fire a single shot. It didn't need to. Because the war was never about weapons. It was about narrative. The day after the failed invasion, Marcus Cade stood before a global broadcast. Not behind a flag. Not with a title. Just a man in a dark coat, eyes sunken, voice quiet. You asked us to kneel. We stood. You mocked us. We listened. You tried to erase us. And now we are in everything you fear. He paused, then added, This was never about vengeance. It was about memory. And we remember everything. In the background as he spoke, you could hear it faintly. The sound of a child laughing. Not a threat. A reminder that the universe's greatest danger was never human strength or rage or weapons. It was our ability to feel and never let go of what we learned. The council fractured in weeks. Species once united in superiority now tore at each other, arguing over how it had come to this. Some begged Earth for guidance, others ran. But none laughed anymore. And Earth, it didn't conquer. It watched. Because Marcus knew the truth. Empires fall from within. And humans, we just hand them the mirror. The galaxy collapsed without a sound. Not all at once, but in dominoes, quiet and inevitable. What had once been a solid coalition of superiority dissolved into a chorus of paranoia, accusations, and desperation. The council was dead in everything but name, replaced by panic chambers and exile ships floating through silence. Earth didn't send fleets to claim territory. It sent recordings, testimonies of our rise, of the betrayals, of the way their scientists carved into us like meat, of the way their delegates laughed while we bled. The stories weren't censored. They weren't dramatized. Just raw, untouched memory. It became the most watched archive across 5 sectors. One Vrethkai philosopher would later write, "We looked at humans and saw noise. But the noise was language. It was trauma. And it was the only thing we never learned to understand." By 2198, Earth had outgrown Earth. The Off-World Reclamation Initiative had established human-led enclaves on 17 planets. Not through war, but invitation. Alien civilizations, broken and ashamed, offered their homeworlds for human stewardship. "We failed to govern with empathy," they said. "Teach us how to remember." Marcus refused them at first. He wasn't interested in thrones, but the world demanded symbols, and Marcus had become one. Not a leader, not even a man anymore. He was the embodiment of retaliation through memory, so they gave him a title, not president, not commander. The archivist. Because he didn't lead armies, he kept stories. And from those stories, the new order was forged. Black Echo was rebranded as the Resonant Core, no longer a covert organization, but a cultural and psychological infrastructure. Their mission: ensure the mistakes of the past could never be repeated, by any species. Children were raised not in fear of aliens, but in study of their patterns. Emotional translation became the most important field of science. Earthships traveled not with weapons, but with recorders, their mission to observe, remember, and reflect. And yet, some humans didn't want peace. They wanted payback, dominance, the old instincts. They formed a splinter faction, Ashward, made of war veterans, betrayed diplomats, and survivors who couldn't let go of the pain. They believed Earth had gone soft, that we were wasting the opportunity to rule. Marcus met with them once. It didn't go well. They accused him of weakness, of idealism. He let them talk, let them spit and shout. Then he simply handed them a copy of his mind record, a full upload of every memory, every scar, every loss. "Rule if you want," he said quietly, "but only after you carry all of this." They never returned, but Marcus knew. Peace is never permanent. Ashward would grow in the shadows. Other species would rise with new ideas of supremacy. The cycle would try to begin again. That's why he kept building the archive, not as a warning, but as a seed. Because humans had done the impossible, we'd turned ridicule into religion, turned trauma into philosophy, turned grief into evolution, and one day, when the stars mocked again, the archive would speak back, not with fire, but with truth. The archive was silent, not empty, just still. Beneath the icy crust of Europa Station Theta, it pulsed in low hums and flickers, a vault of emotion, memory, and everything the galaxy tried to forget. The resonant core oversaw its growth, feeding it voices from 100 species, human and alien alike. Not to control them, but to understand. Above, space shimmered. In 2214, a new signal breached the edge of known space. Not Council, not Ashward. Something else. something old. A pattern older than the Galarians, older than Earth's first fires. It wasn't language. It wasn't math. It was laughter, but not cruel, not mocking, curious, ancient. And Marcus, older now, slowed but unbroken, stood at the helm of Earth's first resonance vessel, the Solace 9, listening. "Do we respond?" his lieutenant asked. Marcus didn't speak, not at first. He walked the observation deck, eyes cast into the void, feeling the echoes of a time when that sound triggered rage. When laughter meant inferiority, mockery, a reminder of how far below we once were. But now, it was different. Because humanity had become the species that knew what laughter meant, in every dialect, every tone, every pitch of grief and joy. We had studied it, survived it, mastered it. He pressed a finger to the console. "Record this," he said, "and reply." "To say what, sir?" Marcus smiled, not with triumph, but with weight, with the knowledge of everything Earth had endured, and everything it still would. He leaned forward. "Tell them," he said, "we're listening. Tell them we remember. And tell them," a pause, "this time we laugh with you." The signal was sent. In the archive, another story was stored, not of war, not of loss, but of acceptance. A final page in a long, brutal book, a chapter that proved what the galaxy never believed, that humanity was never just dangerous. We were resilient, we were memory, and we were done being underestimated.